Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this this meeting of the East Cambs District Council Planning Committee. It's the first of a new administration, so bear with me while I just welcome some of our new members. I would like to say welcome to our new members, and not only new members to the council, but also new members to this committee. We've always tried to have a very pleasant and workmanlike attitude amongst ourselves, and I hope and intend that this continues. And if there are any new members, older members can take their seats if they wish. However, I'm here to help should any of the new members have any questions, and if they want to come up to me afterwards, then I'd be delighted to help them. There is a thing which I'd like all members to be aware of. You have the right to call in any planning application that you want to the planning committee. I would stress to you that the additional cost to the authority of such actions is in the region of in excess of £1,000. And in some cases, when there are 2 or 3 call-ins, it means that a meeting has to take place, which otherwise wouldn't have done. And then the costs can be as many as 10 times the normal cost. It is essential as a safeguard for various things that it is kept, but I would ask members to use that privilege very, very, very sparingly. And it is something that you can do, but we just please beware. You will notice that we've started now asking members to declare their interests when they are on the planning bus in the morning. The reason for this is the committee really has started its function at the time we get on the bus. So it would be necessary, for example, for a member to declare on the bus so they wouldn't go to the site and would stay in the bus while we were on the site visit. So there's something there. Again, for new members, my vice chairman here keeps a list of speakers. And so will you try and catch Councillor Brown's eye, and he'll put you on a list, and I'll try and work through the list of speakers from the list he gives me. We do have a rule for speakers and also people to submit letters, to submit them to the committee at least 48 hours before the start of a meeting. This is to give members the opportunity to read those letters and take them into account. If someone wants to speak, we have a ruling that it must be notified to the clerk by 10 o'clock on the morning of the meeting. Day before the meeting, I beg your pardon. So we've got time to reprint the paperwork, etc. Now, members aren't restricted to that. Members can submit a letter or a statement right up until the start of the meeting. However, can I say this is not very productive? It doesn't give members who are on the committee the chance to read and digest the facts, and it is not very helpful. Normally, a member does have access to officers, and if he or she has got an issue or a question she wants to ask, they can normally be made direct to the officers, and the officers in most cases can answer the queries they have. So although it is a privilege that members have, I believe it's something which should not be used on a regular basis. Okay, so that's quite a lot of me, and we'll now go back to the agenda as published. Item 1, apologies and substitutions.
We have apologies from Councillor James Lay and Councillor Catherine Holtzman, and we have Councillor Julia Hupper here as a substitute for Councillor Lay.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest, item number 2. Christine.
I would declare an interest in the first agenda item, 10 Dexter Lane, Little Port. Sorry, it's the second item on today's.
I think it's number
agenda.
5, isn't it?
6.
6.
Yeah, 6. Because I originally spoke in support of this at a previous meeting, and I called this in simply because the original application retrospective had been called into this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. No other declarations of interest. We have minutes, which I'm sure all members have read, on the 5th of April, the 26th of April, and the 25th of May. Now, is there any reason members have why I should not, after the meeting, sign these as being a correct record? No? Okay. Chairman's announcements you've already had an unannounced change to the agenda. And so we now move on to item number 5, and we go to the officer report.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Item number 5 is the proposal for the change of use and extension of the former engineering workshop, the creation of a new visitor centre with cafe, restaurant and retail facilities, car parking, new highway access arrangements and public access to the Arboretum at Bartram Trees near Soham. So the image above, just checking it is there, it is. The image above shows the aerial of the site outlined in red, which members will have seen on site this morning. And this is a more aerial view of the site. I do have one item of housekeeping which I should make members aware of. This is that paragraph 1.1 of my officer report should read that members are recommended to approve the application subject to the signing of an agreed unilateral undertaking, confirming that the previous planning permission from 2017 will not be implemented, and delegated authority to the director legal to agree the terms, and subject to the recommended conditions summarised in Appendix 1 of my report.
If I can just interrupt there, have all members had that amendment? So you're all online with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So just to recap, this is a full application for the change of use and extension of the former engineering workshop to create a new visitor centre with cafe, restaurant and retail facilities, car parking and new highway access arrangements and public access to the Arboretum. So the main considerations for this proposal are the principle of development, visual amenity, residential amenity, traffic and transportation, parking provision, biodiversity and ecology, and water management. The officer report that I've prepared in advance of the committee meeting sets out the full policy requirements for this application and discusses in depth the planning balance. The purpose of this presentation is to give a brief overview of the main considerations and to answer any questions that you may have. So in terms of the principle of development, in summary, officers consider that the proposal complies with policies EMP1, EMP2, EMP4 and EMP7 of the local plan by providing an expansion of the existing business through the conversion and extension of an existing building on a previously developed site, which would provide a visitor attraction. The engineering workshop has ceased to operate, and the proposal would mean that the site would continue to be used for employment purposes. The proposal is also considered to comply with the provisions of the NPPF. It's considered the proposal will not adversely affect the vitality and viability of the town centres of Soham and Ely. And as already detailed, the proposal has the potential to enhance the town centres through the increased visitor numbers to the area. The proposal will also act as a visitor attraction, which Policy Com1 specifically supports. The principle of development is therefore considered to be acceptable, providing that it accords with all other relevant planning policies. So in terms of visual impacts, the proposed conversion and extension of the engineering workshop to form the visitor centre is considered to be a high quality scheme, utilising an attractive palette of materials such as natural timber, stone clad chimney crests and limestone or clunch, and slay grate composite roofing. The existing building form towards the front of the site will retain its dimensions, with the extended elements being positioned to the rear and side of the building. The proposal will result in an altered appearance of the site. However, this is considered to be much improved as a result of the application due to the more attractive external materials introduced, as well as the site frontage being clear of the existing industrial materials and machinery and landscaped to form an attractive entrance. The extended elements of the building remain subservient to the existing and appear as extensions out of sight of the public highway and respecting the existing presence of the building within the street scene. The acceptability of introducing the arboretum element has already been considered under an application in 2019 and is currently under construction, with engineering operations having been carried out to form the landscaped areas and lake and planting having taken place. The arboretum is considered to remain acceptable from a visual aspect, and there have been no changes in policy which would warrant an alternative conclusion. The widening of Eye Hill Drove has previously been agreed and considered acceptable in visual terms under the 2017 application. The current proposal would reduce the extent of the works as the access into the site would be positioned closer to the junction with the A142. The road improvements are not considered to be visually harmful to the character of the area, and the replacement hedgerow to facilitate these works can be secured by condition. The detailed design of soft landscaping, including species and planting specifications, can be secured by a planning condition, and therefore it's considered that the proposal complies with policies ENV1 and ENV2 of the local plan and the NPPF. In terms of residential amenity, the proposal is not considered to create any overlooking to neighbouring occupiers. Additionally, the separation distances between the building and neighbouring occupiers mean that the proposal would not create any overshadowing or overbearing impacts. It is acknowledged that the proposal as a whole, including the highway improvement works, will have an effect on the residential amenity of existing occupiers on Eye Hill Drove. And it's accepted that the character of the drove is likely to change, and there will be a certain level of noise and disturbance from traffic movements and users of the visitor centre. Consideration should be given to the existing use of the site, which has been operating as an engineering workshop for large machinery and is likely to have created a level of noise disturbance while in operation. There will be increased traffic and deliveries to the Barcham Trees site in connection with the retail stock and cafe restaurant areas. However, it's considered that once inside the visitor centre or the arboretum, that visitors would not directly impact on the amenity of residents. It should also be noted that the proposal would see a reduction in the floor space from the original proposal and will result in a reduction of the roadworks required on Eye Hill Drove. And on balance, it's considered that subject to the imposition of appropriate planning conditions, that the proposal will not have a significantly detrimental effect on residential amenities such that it should warrant refusal of the application. It's considered that the proposal therefore complies with policy ENV2 of the local plan and the NPPF. The matters of opening hours and delivery hours can be secured by way of conditions, and it's also recommended that conditions are appended to any grant of permission which restrict construction hours and require a construction environmental management plan to be submitted. In terms of highways, the proposal includes 126 parking spaces, of which 19 will be family spaces with extra accessibility provision, and 17 will be disabled spaces located just to the south of the main building. They're shaded slightly greyer on that image. The proposal also includes the parking provision for 20 motorcycles and 72 pedal bicycles. The floor spaces dedicated to the retail and food elements appear to be equally split, and therefore under the parking requirements of policy COM 8, the proposal would require approximately 156 spaces. So while the proposal shows a small shortfall at 126 spaces, given the trip rates during the weekend daytime peak hours set out in the transport assessment, it's considered that the parking proposed is sufficient to accommodate this type of development. As I've already mentioned, the proposal includes improvements to Eye Hill Drove involving the widening of the road up to the site access, the upgrade of the existing A142 Ely Road Eye Hill Drove junction to include a ghost island junction, a pedestrian island crossing facility and new and extended footpaths, and a bus stop to the lay-by. There'll also be some amendments to the barway turning as well to improve that junction. The proposal will see a reduction in the extent of Eye Hill Drive, which requires widening from the previous scheme, and we'll see the retention of more trees and hedgerows as a result. It should be noted that the scale of the visitor centre is significantly reduced from that which was previously approved. The Cambridgeshire County Council Transport Assessment Team have advised that they would recommend. No, sorry, let me start again. Cambridgeshire County Council Transport Assessment Team have advised they have recommended approval of a larger scheme in 2017, and they would not have any comments to make. They note that the proposal would generate less trips than the previously approved 2017 application. The Local Highways Authority have also reviewed the proposals and advised that the highways mitigation measures along the 142 and Eye Hill Drive align with previous permissions and therefore remain acceptable. In terms of ecology, the applicant has submitted ecology appraisals as part of the application. The reports make a number of recommendations for avoidance, mitigation and enhancement measures, and conclude that through the implementation of these measures, all significant impacts from the proposed development can be mitigated in line with relevant wildlife legislation and planning policy. The report sets out that the proposal is expected to result in significant enhancements for a range of protected species. The Arboretum has already been agreed under the 2019 application and brings a significant environmental benefits, such as the creation of large areas of habitat suitable for a number of species, significant tree planting in the region of 2,000 trees, and the creation of a new habitat to establish fen ragwort. It's considered that conditions can be appended which secure biodiversity enhancements on the site. In terms of flood risk and drainage, a small area of the site is within flood zones 2 and 3, but within areas benefiting from flood defences. Sequentially, the local planning authority is satisfied there are no alternative sites to locate this development due to the necessity to locate the proposal next to the existing business. The physical layout of the development has been designed to avoid, where practically possible, areas known to be at risk of flooding, which is in line with national policy and the Cambridgeshire Flood and Water SPD. Following an amendment to reposition the overflow parking, there are no objections to the scheme from the Environment Agency, Lead Local Flood Authority, Anglian Water or the Internal Drainage Board, and conditions have been requested from the Lead Local Flood Authority. With regard to other matters, sustainability measures may be dealt with by way of condition. And also, as I've previously mentioned, the applicant is preparing a unilateral undertaking to revoke the previous visitor centre permission. So in summary, on balance, the proposal is considered to comply with the local plan by providing an expansion of the existing business through the conversion and extension of an existing building on a previously developed site, which would provide a tourist attraction. The proposal would mean that the engineering workshop site would continue to be used for employment purposes. The proposal would bring about economic benefits in terms of additional employment, the expansion and diversification of an established business in the district, and the attraction of visitors to the area. It is acknowledged that the proposal will result in an increase in traffic in the area, and that nearby residents may be affected by the intensification of the site, which attracts some weight against the proposal. However, the applicant is providing a comprehensive scheme of highways improvements as part of the proposal, and these are considered to be acceptable by both the Local Highways Authority and the County Council Transport Assessment Team. So in the absence of any objection, it's considered that the scheme complies with the relevant development plan policies in relation to highway safety. In addition, it's considered that with the appropriate conditions in relation to opening hours, that the impacts on residential amenity from traffic movements would not be significantly harmful, such as to warrant refusal. The proposal as a whole is not considered to create any significantly detrimental impacts on residential amenity, and appropriate conditions can be appended to any granted permission which protects the amenity of residents. While the proposal will result in a change to the appearance of Eye Hill Drive, this is not considered to be significantly harmful, such as to warrant refusal of the application, and elements of the proposal will result in an enhancement to the appearance of the engineering site. The proposal is therefore considered to be compliant with policies relating to visual appearance and design. The proposal has demonstrated that matters of flood risk and drainage can be adequately dealt with, and conditions can be secured that a scheme is put forward which details sustainability measures. The proposal is not considered to create any ecological harm and is considered to result in a significant environmental gain in terms of habitat creation. So on balance, the benefits of the proposal are considered to significantly outweigh the limited harm to the character of the area and residential amenity through increased traffic movements in the area. and the application is recommended for approval, subject to the completion of the unilateral undertaking to confirm that the previous visitor centre permission will not be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine, and congratulations on a very comprehensive report. Appreciate it. We have two speakers, Warren Holmes Chatfield, the applicant, and Adam Davis, the agent. Would you like to come up and make your presentation? You have 5 minutes to split between the two of you.
Good afternoon. My name's Warren Holmes Chatfield. I'm from Barcham Trees. I brought with me today, for any technical questions you may have, Adam Davis, our planning consultant. I'd just like to thank Catherine for her comprehensive committee report and her help with the planning application, so thank you. Barcham has been working within this community for over 35 years, employing 75 full-time staff and taking on an extra 25 at our busiest periods. Over that time, we've become one of the leading horticultural businesses in Europe, specialising in trees and proudly holding 2 royal warrants. You may recall that the planning committee granted us permission for a larger new build visitor centre in Arboretum back in 2018. Since then, we have started to lay out and plant the Arboretum with over 5,000 trees and hedging plants. Later in 2018, the opportunity to purchase the site, the subject of this application, came up. Logically, it made a much better choice for us to convert an existing building and provide a simpler access arrangements. The application for an Arboretum and the country's first biosecure garden centre will help strengthen our ties with the local community, creating 35 to 40 extra jobs and bringing more tourism to the local area. The Arboretum is our chance to show people how important trees are, both for practical, educational, and aesthetic purposes. We're all becoming acutely aware of climate change. Trees will and are playing a major role in climate mitigation. And this is our chance to highlight their importance through showing and educating people, which has been our passion for many years. Our project is unique in that we are putting more trees back into the landscape than we're taking out. The creation of the Arboretum will leave a lasting legacy for future generations, alongside with playing some role in helping with climate change. So we hope you can see the value of this unique project, both for the local community, the environment, and the surrounding area. And I hope you're able to support this application. Thank you.
Have we any more? Or that's it? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Will you just sit where you are for a minute, please? Members, questions? Councillor Huffer.
I'm not sure if it's a question for Catherine or for the applicant, to be honest with you. I see you've got lots of car parking provision and motorbike provision and pedal cycle provision, but you haven't made any provision for coaches.
Yeah, it's not anticipated there will be many coaches arriving. What we've discussed with Highways is that any coach visits would be by appointment only, and they would use the existing access route into the existing working Bartram Trees site, which will link round the back. So there's the possibility that coach trips can go there, but it's not part of the business model that there'll be regular coach trips.
So they'd use the tradesman's entrance then. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson. And can I ask members and speakers to keep the microphone fairly near to their mouths if possible, please? Thank you.
Chair. What has happened to whatever was inside that barn that we looked into, a great big area? What's happened to all the equipment and stuff? Is it?
The original building was agricultural engineering business, and that closed about sort of 2 years ago. Russell, the occupier, then sold all the machinery out of there to varying contractors who wanted it. It was pretty old fashioned machinery, which was pretty well sought after, I think. So yeah, so it's completely empty at the moment. Yes.
Thank you, councillor Brown.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Being a background in horticulture, I welcome the application. Just one question though. I noticed in the paperwork comments from the police that they would encourage you to consider submitting a secured by design application as they believe the development could attain this award. Have you considered doing that?
Their advice also was about sort of window and door fitments and alarms and bits and pieces. Again, as part of the detailed design of the building and the finishes and fitting out and stuff. Again, yeah, the applicants will consult with the local police. However, I think the police also said that they consider it to be a fairly low crime area. They didn't see it to be a high risk. But obviously, from Warren's point of view, he wants to make sure it's a secure building and yeah, doesn't encourage any criminal activity.
Councillor Trapp.
Thank you. So I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but what evidence do you have that this could be, we have so many people coming? Because we've got 2 garden centres nearby, haven't we, in Soham, in Fordham. And I'm not sure how people will how many visitors will get to an arboretum or buying things. I mean, I'd be interested to know.
I think it's a completely different offering. Garden centre, we've attached that name to it because everybody can understand what that is. You talk about an arboretum, people don't really understand what an arboretum is, and we haven't really locked down the name of the facility yet. But I think we're offering a completely different view on it. We are not selling products from abroad. We're selling products that we grow ourselves. So there's the production facility next door, which is a unique thing. The 16-acre arboretum, no garden centre's got a 16-acre arboretum attached to it, which enables us to show our trees at maturity. And when the business gets developed, we want to add an educational element to that. We do work with the local schools already, wherever we can. So it's more an educational element as well as a retail destination, which I feel garden centres don't offer in that format.
Thank you very much. It's very helpful.
Councillor Kinwell.
Thank you for that. And can you confirm your plans on electric car charging points?
Yeah, there will be charging points there. That hasn't been agreed on the quantity, but they'll be available. Of course, they will. It's part of what we're all about, the sustainability thing. So yeah, they will be available.
Thank you.
We've got also now Councillor Goodall.
Thank you, Chair. This is for Catherine. I see in 7.47.
No, excuse me, councillor. At the moment, it's questions to the speakers only.
I beg your pardon.
You'll get the opportunity to ask the officer later. Any more questions for Councillor Ambrose-Smith?
Good afternoon. I'm very familiar with that area. We make use of a touring caravan storage facility adjacent to there. I have to say that almost all our experience of coming out down Ihill Road where it meets the Ely to Soham Road is an absolute nightmare. Typically today on our councillor bus visit, there was hardly a vehicle in sight. But I do have a vision of on a busy, I don't know, Sunday afternoon or whatever, that trying to get out of that road, it will back up towards the entrance to your site. I mean, I presume that you've done traffic flow, all sorts of, studies and things. You're quite confident that it will happen okay, because as I say, our experience all times of the day has been an absolute nightmare to get out there. You can sit there for 3 or 4 minutes sometimes.
Yes, we have done a detailed transport assessment, and the highway team, we work closely with them on the previous application. So actually the junction improvement works we're proposing there, which include a ghosted turn. The county highways see that as a significant benefit to the safety of that junction, actually. Whilst I appreciate there will be traffic still flowing along the road, and that those volumes won't change, and there may be some backup. I think our transport assessment thinks the wait times will only be sort of like minute 30 seconds. It seems like a long time when you're sitting there, but in reality, it's not necessarily that long. And in terms of the flow of traffic in and out of the visitor centre, there's not going to be massive peaks of people all leaving at the same time. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's it. You can go back to your seats, and thank you very much for coming. We have a statement which Caroline Evans is going to read out from Councillor Keith Horgan.
Thank you, Chairman. Statement from the Ward Councillor Keith Horgan. As someone who uses Eye Hill Drive regularly, I am very familiar with the junction visitors will use from the busy A142 to access this proposed development. As a knowledgeable local resident, I have some concerns with the ability of Eye Hill Drive to safely handle traffic volumes at busy periods. I therefore ask ECDC Planning to consider my suggestions for mitigating these concerns with simple conditions should the application be approved. Firstly, I would like to explain the risks with the development as proposed. The entrance to the old engineering site is approximately 145 metres from the A142 junction. This single track road could easily be blocked to traffic moving in either direction along Eye Hill Drive at busy periods, with vehicles entering or leaving the proposed visitor centre in convoy. Whilst Cambridgeshire County Council's Transport Assessment Team have stated they have no objections, and it is proposed widening Eye Hill Drive to 6.5 metres for 155 metres from the A142 junction, it is unclear why the latest swept path analysis, P348-15005, Rev A dated 6th of December 2022, needs to advise that on an infrequent basis, a coach bus car can wait on highway, allowing a vehicle to exit the site. In fact, it was noted by Andre Chabot, engineer, Highway Development Management, in his letter of 25th August 2022, that while the likelihood of two large vehicles being required to pass one another at the junction is unclear, it is evident from the original Plan A swept path plan that this could not be achieved. Hence the reason Plan B was needed. However, this only goes as far as 155 metres from the A142 junction, and this is not far enough in my opinion. The widening of Eye Hill Drive for 155 metres should take it past the entrance of the proposed site, but according to the drawings submitted, it does not appear this to be the case. Please see drawings 9070 FM01 DR 003 revision 11 dated 15th of May 2023 and the above referenced swept path analysis P348-15005 revision A dated 6th of December 2022. If the strategy for vehicles to safely enter and exit the site was sufficient, then why is it necessary for any vehicle to wait on the highway? I would ask that ECDC carefully review this matter to avoid the possibility of traffic at busy visitor periods to potentially have to back up to the junction with the A142 and occasionally overspill onto the A142 itself. Possible mitigating conditions I'm asking for are: 1, state that road widening to 6.5 metres must extend at least 200 metres from the A142. Reason, to allow for vehicles to safely pass irrespective of which way they enter or leave the site, and to stop blocking the driveway of an adjacent domestic property, Boa Vista. Number 2, have a yellow box junction painted on the road outside the entrance. Reason, to keep the junction clear and to ensure that emergency vehicles always have the ability to access the site and leave without delay. And number 3, install traffic lights at the junction of the A142 and Eye Hill Drive. Reason, to ensure the safe passage of vehicles onto the busy A142 where the speed limit is 50 miles an hour and to minimise the chances of a high-speed vehicle collision. Thank you, Chairman.
First of all, when did you receive that?
This morning, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Officer comment. I think, I know you haven't had opportunity to study Councillor Hogan's letter, but maybe you can add some clarity to it.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do.
and generally make extra comments.
Yeah, absolutely. I do also have Shane Luck here from the local highways authority. So I am not a highways engineer. If there are any questions from members in relation to highways, he is here to help answer those. With regard to the comments that have been made, I would advise that some of these proposals are subject to traffic regulation orders, which is something outside of the planning process. They would need to go through full detailed design safety audit and a traffic regulation order process before they could be conditioned. I would just remind members that in terms of highway safety, these proposals have already been agreed on a previous scheme, and they have been considered acceptable. They have been assessed by the local highways authority and the county council transport assessment team again, and they are considered acceptable. So we have no statutory objections on highway safety grounds. That is all I can say on the matter. If there's anything more technical, we do have Shane here.
So we have a Cambridgeshire County Council Highways engineer with us, do we? Have you got anything you'd like to add to this? Please come up and
Yes, so I'm Shane Luck, I'm the Principal Highway Development Management Engineer, covering East Cambridgeshire and amongst other areas. We have reviewed the proposals, and Catherine is correct that we do not have any objections on highway safety grounds in reference to the correspondence which was just read out. The works to the A142 were previously permitted under a separate permission for a larger scale development, and those works are no different in the current proposals. So we maintain that we have no objection, but to provide further context, the proposals, when originally submitted, underwent detailed review, safety audits, revisions, and the solutions were agreed with the Highway Authority. The works to Eye Hill Drove do vary from the previous application on the basis that the access location is now closer to the A142, it has moved to the west. The proposals widen the Eye Hill Drove to 6.5 meters up to the access. However, the widening does fall slightly short of the access where it narrows to single vehicle width for short length. Myself and my team, we engaged with the applicant's consultants to refine the proposals to a point where we were content that the proposals were safe. And some of the, as Catherine stated, some of the mitigation measures suggested, so yellow box junctions as an example, cannot reasonably be conditioned as they are governed by legislation which sits outside the planning system. So the applicant would have no control over the implementation. And there's one of the other points raised about the signalized junction on the A142 Eye Hill Drove junction. Signals are typically implemented on capacity grounds, not on safety grounds. Traffic signals on high-speed roads, if not done carefully, can introduce as many safety issues as they resolve. So in summary, we as the Highway Authority have no objection to this proposal.
first of all, thank you very much for coming here this afternoon. And in a nutshell, you're saying that you're quite content with this latest application and the Highways Authority approval of it.
Correct.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. Thank you very much. It's a long way for such a short performance, but thank you.
No problem.
Office. Councillor Trapp, sorry.
I'm sorry, thank you very much. I note your point about traffic lights, and I think they're probably on the high-speed road quite counterproductive. How do you regard roundabouts on that kind of road? Would they be equally unproductive, or would they? I'm just thinking that certainly in southern Portugal, they have a lot of roundabouts for access from side roads. It slows traffic down a bit, and much to the distress of the people who want to go along the roads, but it does help local people.
Roundabouts are land intensive, so they take up large footprints. In this particular instance, I do not believe the land is available for a roundabout to be constructed to the acceptable design standards. However, if for argument's sake, a roundabout could be designed and constructed, they typically work best when flows, so traffic flows in different directions, are balanced. in this case, the north-south movement would be by a significant amount of predominant flow, which would then unbalance the roundabout and would lead to its inefficient operation. But from a safety perspective, if it could be made to work, there are no issues in principle with it.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Goodell, we have at the moment, we've got specific questions to the local highways. There is a section coming up very shortly, which is questions to the officer.
This
You
is for
want one
highways.
the
My
highways.
question for the officer was about highways. So
So
this
we've hit
worked
the
in
mark.
nicely.
Please continue.
Okay. All I wanted is a bit of clarification. The pedestrian island, would that be a Pelican crossing as well, or is it just an island for people to get halfway across safely and then continue when it's safe on the other side? That's my only question.
It would be the latter, it would be uncontrolled, so it would not have signals, would not have beacons. Again, from a safety perspective, when you have controlled pedestrian crossings, so as a crossing, so a zebra, pelican, of any of those types, when the pedestrian flows are very low, drivers who travel those routes every day become used to them not being used. And on a rare occasion they do become used, they're often taken by surprise and are not expecting the need to stop. So unless a pedestrian crossing can achieve a certain threshold of usage, controlling that crossing through lights or other means is inadvisable.
Thank you, thank you. Councillor Trapp, I seem to have your name.
Yes, I
somehow
repeat.
mysteriously got
I'm
on
not
my list
sure
again.
if it's a question for the traffic officer or for Catherine. But Councillor Horgan mentioned about the reduction of the dueling or whatever by 250 meters. Can one assure that it looks to me like the entrance to this place is less than 150 meters from the side road, from the main road? Is that right?
Yep.
Mm.
I think this is I think we've exhausted the highways officer,
Okay, well-
and I think we'll go, if we may, we'll go back to the officer making general comments, and then you'll have the opportunity to question the officer. So thank you, and we can now get officer comments. Catherine.
So on the access plan that I have here, it's showing about 140 meters roughly. In terms of the figure, we have a plan here which specifically shows the widening improvements. And these works are also subject to a separate agreement with the local highways authority. So I don't, in terms of the figures, I'm not able to clarify everything right now. I'm trying to establish what the concern is in terms of the figure.
Oops, sorry. Councillor Horgan mentioned that it was reduced to 146 meters or something, but it seemed to me that actually that would be enough to take it to the entrance. And I just wanted to clarify that point.
So the road widening works are up to the site access. Historically, on the previous application, they were much further, they extended much further down the road. So these are significantly reduced, but they go up to the current site access.
Thank you very much.
We are jumping about a little bit, but I can see that there's some agitation over there, and you'd like to fill us in with some extra information.
I think the key point about the widening of the Drove Road is where it comes up to the access into the new site. There's a veteran oak tree in the hedge. So we've had to carefully arrange the highway so it doesn't, so it will narrow right at the entrance into the site, which we've had lengthy discussions with Highways about to make sure it's safe and secure. And that was the earlier email referred to about the overrun for coaches. And that's why we had discussions about coaches actually not using that entrance, going through the main entrance. But it's all to protect and keep the oak tree, because Bartram trees don't want to be chopping down a veteran oak tree. But previously it did have to go, and they were proposing to replace it with 20 oak trees along the Drove Road under the old application when the whole Drove Road needed to be widened. So that hopefully explains the slight confusion.
Thank you very much. And your fidgeting came to my attention. Thank you. And we have seen the oak tree this morning, by the way, and inspected it. Catherine, we're going to get back into some semblance of order now. So we're now having further comments from you, and then they will be subject to questioning.
Thank you, Chair. I have no further comments other than to just reiterate that we have no statutory objections in terms of highway safety, and the works have been agreed on a previous scheme. So if members could just bear that in mind. Thank you.
So we now move on to questions to the officer. Not compulsory. No. That's okay, no questions for the officer. Well, we then now move on to general debate. So is that the first one for before? Councillor Huffy, yes, you were first.
Councillor Huffy.
Yeah,
Beat
thank you, Chair.
Councillor Trapp. Well,
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a terrific proposal, and I fully endorse the officer's recommendation to approve. And if the Chair is content, I'm happy to propose that we approve this application as it stands.
thank you very, very much indeed. And I make a note that you've proposed that we accept the officer's recommendation, and it would be with the amendment that, as we've already discussed. And just for the record, I would like personally to second this application, which I now do, but we will continue the discussions. And members. Gareth Wilson.
Unfortunately, Chairman, you've taken away what I was going to do, which was to second the proposal, because I think it's a jolly good scheme that we've got there, and I think it'd be very useful. And the idea of future going with educational things as well strikes me as a very useful addition to this community.
Well, I'm glad that we totally agree on this, Councillor Wilson, and long may it continue. Councillor Ambrose Smith.
You beat me to it as well. I just wish to say I think this is an excellent proposition, and the additional jobs within the immediate area are very welcome. And yeah, I wish it well, as if it's approved as I expect it will be.
Councillor Trapp.
I wasn't going to say, but I wasn't going to oppose it. My only concern, and I think it's a jolly good idea, very, very good, is my only real concern is about access back from Hill Drove or whatever it's called. So I haven't quite got the terminology there, right? Maybe onto the A142, particularly if one's going back to Ely. And I think we were lucky today in the planning bus to get out after what? Well, I'm not sure, maybe in Fordham that's called whizzing out, but that, down in Bottisham Ward, we think of that as sort of slowly pondering out. And that's my only concern about when you get all the visitors you are going to be getting, that people will be having difficulty in turning right onto that road.
Okay, we have a Councillor Whelan.
Yes, I actually have those concerns as well about the turning right off that junction onto the A142. Knowing what that area is like generally, coming up from the Newmarket area and everything, and other junctions where you have to turn right and the backlog down to the entrance, hoping that you will get lots of visitors there. But that is the only concern I have with that actual turning right out of that junction.
Thank you. Well, we have a proposal and we have it seconded as well. So, and I don't think there's anybody, unless anybody says that they are objecting to it. I don't think there are. So I'm going to go straight to a vote. The vote is as per the officer's recommendation with the amendment which you've all seen. So will those in favour, and that's been proposed by Councillor Huffer and seconded by myself. So will those in favour please raise their hands? Okay. Those against, please raise their hands. And those abstaining, please raise.
The motion is passed with 8 votes in favour, no votes against and 2 abstentions.
Okay, so that is now carried. And gentlemen applicants, if you wish to leave, you're welcome to leave now. Or if you'd like to stay and enjoy your afternoon, you're welcome to stay with us. Thank you for coming. And the same goes for the highways. We now move on to agenda item 6, and Holly, your presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Agenda item 6 concerns a retrospective front boundary treatment at 10 Dexter Lane in Littleport. The application site is here. Some members may recognise the site from an earlier March committee, and I will explain a little bit about planning history as we go on. The slide on the screen shows the red line boundary and an aerial view. And for some context, it's in the Highfields development just off Ely Road and the mini roundabout in Littleport. Up on the screen is some photos. Members will have seen this from the site visit today. This, please note, does not represent the currently proposed application. This is the previously refused application that I will, as I said, explain slightly later on. Some more photos of the fence. This is at the 1.2 metre proposed. The proposals would leave this as it is. Some further images of the fence, as well as from the wider Dexter Lane in the bottom right-hand corner, looking towards the application site. The main considerations are considered to be the impact on the character of the street scene of the proposal. The application proposal concerns the retrospective retention of a 1.2 metre fence and set of gates across the front boundary of the application property. Members are reminded that there are permitted development rights that homeowners do benefit from. These are established at a national level, and they represent a very light touch approach and a far less prescriptive approach to development, which local planning authorities have very little to no control over. Members are also reminded that the existence of permitted development rights does not necessarily guarantee the highest quality of development. Notwithstanding, it is relevant to note the application proposals before you do not represent permitted development. They are exceeding the 1 metre baseline that is allowed without requiring express consent. It is fully acknowledged that the applicants do have this as a realistic fallback position and could therefore have erected a 1 metre close border fence. But it is important to note that the local planning authority does not consider that this 1 metre fence would represent an appropriate or visually acceptable form of development. Leading on to the actual proposal is considered that the fence and gate represent an alien feature in the street scene that results in visual harm by enclosing the application property, eroding the open character of the cluster of dwellings, as well as the wider open character of Dexter Lane. There are other examples of close border fencing in the street scene. However, it is noted these are conventionally to the side boundaries and backs of dwellings, enclosing the rear gardens. It is considered to further evidence the incongruous nature of the proposed development. The applicant has advanced the argument that the fencing is required for safety purposes to enclose the garden, but it is relevant the application property does benefit from a substantial rear garden as well, which is enclosed and considered to be safe. It is acknowledged as part of these revised proposals, the planting has been proposed behind the fencing, and whilst it is considered to be a contribution to the street scene in its own right, the siting behind the fence is not considered to soften the very solid and expansive stretch of fencing within the street scene. Members are also reminded that planting cannot be relied upon to make otherwise unacceptable development acceptable, given the fact that it is a living organism. Members are reminded that this application represents a submission of a previously refused scheme. As mentioned, this was taken to the March committee with recommendation for refusal. That scheme was the one which was seen on site today with a 1.8 metre and part 1.2 metre fence and gates. However, for the reasons set out within this report, it is not considered that the revised development has addressed officer concerns, and therefore there is recommendation still of refusal on the basis of visual harm, and there's not considered to be any material considerations that would warrant a different approach being taken. So the application is considered to be acceptable on all other grounds with regards to residential amenity, highway safety and parking and trees, but ultimately is recommended for refusal on the basis of its visual impact. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And we have a speaker, Jamie Palmer. I think you're familiar with the process. It's 5 minutes and the amber light will go on at 4. Start when you're ready, please.
Good afternoon, Chairman, councillors and planning team. And again, thank you for the opportunity to address you all. Perhaps I can start by giving a little bit of a background information in relation to this application. My clients purchased the property in question as a new build from the house builder during the height of COVID. Prior to occupation, both the builder and the builder's solicitors were consulted regarding the inclusion of the fence you will have seen on site during your visit, and whether such a fence would require planning permission. At this point, my clients were advised by their respective parties that a fence of the nature erected would not require planning permission. A sale was subsequently agreed, the fence erected to provide safe frontage environment to the client's family and their pets, preventing them from running free at the front of the property onto the highway, and my clients moved into their lovely new home. Fast forward to October 2021, and my clients received a letter from this authority's enforcement team stating that as the fence was over 1 metre high, there was a requirement to either reduce throughout to 1 metre high or make a retrospective application for consideration of the fence as it stands. It was at this point that I was first contacted by the client to ask if I could act as agent and make the respective application requested. At the client's request, an initial retrospective application was made for the fence as it stands, with a portion of the fence at a height of 1.8 metres, reducing after circa 5 metres on approach to a lower level of 1.2 high, which included the gates, as you've been shown today. The retrospective application was called in to be determined at this planning committee in March 2023 and was subsequently refused. I'm sure you would have noted from either of your site visits, but there are notable sections of visible boundary treatments on approach to the older sections of Dexter Lane to the west, where materials of both boarded fencing and facing brickwork have exceeded 1.8 metres in height. So there are areas of Dexter Lane where the boundary treatments are not so subtle. Regardless of my former point and following on from the previous refusal at this committee, the proposal before you today is to reduce the entirety of the fence, reduce the entirety of the front boundary fence to the height of 1.2 metres, so the lower section, equivalent to what's there at the moment and the gates. This proposal also includes elements of soft landscaping. I'll refer you, as Holly has just said, to paragraph 7.2.10 of her report that states the applicants could have erected a 1 metre high close boarded fence with gates along this boundary under permitted development, and that this represents the fallback position of what could be achieved, a fence 1 metre in height constructed from exactly the same materials. It's in conclusion that I would therefore ask for your consideration as to whether, in your opinion, The additional 20 centimetres in this instance, hatched blue on the accompanying plans and marginally less than the depth of this piece of paper, would warrant a refusal of these revised proposals given the 1 metre high achievable under PD. Many thanks for your patience and your time today. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Members. Questions for Mr. Palmer? Yes, I've got a winner there.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. So, thank you to you for coming over. I just want to reiterate the developers, because I understand the position that gentlemen would have gone through regarding developers being over salesy and obviously under promise, well, over promising and under delivering in regards to him bidding a fence in 2020. In regards to him, his family, does he have a young child with special educational needs? Because it mentions 7.2.13 that he be having young. Does he have special educational needs? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Trapp.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for coming. I have been there for the previous visit as well. You mentioned fencing already there. Is that the back fencing between this development and the one on the far end of Dexter Lane, or the fencing that is between some of the other houses and the boundary of their property, but set back from the road? I'm not sure which one you're
I
referring
think
to.
Holly had a photograph of it on her report where we were looking back towards the site, that one. And now if you go back immediately adjacent to the highway to next one along, sorry. And again, what I was referring to the 1.8 metre high wall as
At
you
the
swing,
end,
as
but
you
that-
swing round the corner. Yeah, the site is obviously in the distance, which I
Yeah, but
appreciate.
that's a completely different development. And
It's still Dexter Lane. It's only to the west instead of the east. So it's not a
it's
different
blocked
development.
off. Though.
The site is in the distance to the left of the lamppost, Polly, that's correct, isn't it? To the garage to the left. You've got no pointer, I know, but
Yes, Holly, you're quite at liberty
that's
to go ahead.
that's the house there. So
Yeah, yes.
what I was suggesting, Councillor Trapp, was it's on the same stretch of road. The newer houses have been built to the east as you get to the bottom of that road. The older
So,
houses.
where's east here? Littleport is not. I'm not familiar with Littleport.
You come off the main road, sort of past where that garage is in the distance. Once
Yes.
you're past that garage, you either turn right into the little cluster of 4 that have been developed,
Yeah,
of which
okay,
this
right.
application is formed, or you come left
Yeah.
into this section of Dexter Lane, where obviously you've got a 1.8 metre high facing brickwork wall immediately on the back of the carriageway.
Yes, but that's the back of the houses, isn't it?
Correct, yes, but
Yeah.
it's on the back of the carriageway. That was my point. So it's in closer proximity to the highway than what our proposals are. Admittedly, it's on the back, but my point that I was trying to make was it's not completely alien to the area to have a fence that high on the back of the highway.
But all the other frontages are open on the left-hand side.
On the left-hand side, correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Huffer.
Can I ask why you, when this fell into your lap, so to speak, why didn't you say to them, okay, look, it's got to be 1 metre. Let's not mess around. Let's get it down to 1 metre. It then has permitted development rights. We'll be fine. Why did you go for the 1.2? Was it because the gate was already 1.2?
It was to do with the height of the gate and obviously how the gate works with the
Yes.
electric mechanisms and the rails on the back of the existing fence being at 1.2, and to drop
Yeah.
that to a further 200 would have involved sort of, if you like, taking the fence down to the lower rail, putting the second rail back up at the lower level. It wasn't quite as simple as just cutting off that 200 mil.
Yeah, but if push came to shove,
If push came to shove, that would be the far more expensive option for the client.
but it would be. an
Yes,
option.
yes,
Thank you.
which is our fallback position, obviously.
Councillor Trapp.
Sorry. The purpose of the fence, I take it, was to prevent animals and children escaping. But on the other hand, the boundary fence between that property and the next door neighbors is open lattice work, which any self-respecting child would go through, and any dog between yes, yeah, there's the buff house there, and then there's one which is worky behind. There's a sort of, there's a fence between them, which has got about, so it's not that secure anyway. Certainly, certainly if were I a child, that would be, that'd be.
Nothing that a bit of chicken wire could have
There's
fixed.
some distraction going on from the corner here.
Sorry.
Right, okay, thank you very much.
Members, is that the, no more questions? Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much indeed. We have no extra speakers, and we're now going to go to comments from the officer. I beg your pardon. We've got Christine Ambrose Smith and the ward councillor. I'm sorry, Christine. As I understand it, you all recall you've declared an interest, so you're going to make your speech and then take no further part in the application.
Thank you. As you've already heard, the applicant bought their shiny new home under the impression, possibly wrongly, from the builders concerned that a note inserted within the deeds would be fine. East Cams have obviously taken a different view. This was David Ambrose Smith, previously a councillor here, was approached by Mr. Ben Davis, the applicant, to discuss this. It was called in, it was subsequently refused. Councillor David Ambrose Smith didn't stand for re-election, and then when this came back, I felt that I needed to call it into the planning committee for this last and we hope final decision. I understand totally the position of the planning department. They are giving you the facts as as they are laid down. However, at the end of the day, we're talking about a piece of fence, and I have seen the gate and I quite understand the sliding mechanism, and I would imagine it would be an absolute nightmare to start fiddling around, reducing the height of a fence, trying to faff around with the gate and the mechanism. I think that it would not be unreasonable for the sake of this amount of height to say, well, actually, we don't thoroughly agree with this, but on this occasion, perhaps we can agree to differ and allow the applicant to keep his fence. Children and dogs do need to be, other animals do need to be restrained. As a well-known dog owner myself, the thought of a dog, for instance, getting out and running on the road is awful to contemplate or to be lost. And, we have to do as we think best. So I just wonder if it might be a generous thing to do to allow this additional height to stay in place. So thank you very much.
Hold on a second, if you would. Have we got any questions? Have you got any questions for Councillor Ambrose Smith? I've just got one. So what happens if another person in this street came in with another application, which was just a mere little bit above this one, and then somebody else in the street came back and it was just a little bit above that one? Would you say enough is enough?
In Dexter Lane, there are the backs of houses, and as we've seen in the photograph, there is a wall which is a little bit higher as a precedent. The small development of 4 houses, 3 of the other houses have said that they don't like the fence. They've given various reasons not all which are planning reasons. I think originally it was, oh, it would devalue our homes. Well, that's not a planning reason. It will be, as I recall, dangerous to traffic. Well, it's a road that you only go down if you're going to any of those 3 houses. So I don't think that that will stack up personally. I don't think there will be any further houses built in that immediate area. So
We cover the whole of East Cambs.
indeed we do.
Okay, anyway, thank you very much indeed. Councillor Trapp.
Councillor
I haven't
Ambrose.
smiled.
Surprise, surprise, I'm allowed to speak to you. I noticed that the other 2 of the or 3 of the other properties also had built fences in that little corner, but they had done them flush with the house, which preserved that landscape, the open landscape of, and actually were much more secure than this one. So I'm surprised that there is a fallback position as well there, that which actually it is less intrusive than what's happening there now.
I think all I could say is both Councillor David Ambrose Smith and myself drove down there initially when first approached by Mr. Davis, and we drove there. Oh, there's the house. What will we come to look at? Nothing. It didn't, you know, and we had to check the address. Yeah, that's, oh, so it's this fence, is it? It didn't occur to us that this was intrusive and, you know, a terrible eyesore. You know, with Joe Public, I don't think that these objections are awful.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Ambrose Smith. And now we have Holly. Have you any comments to make?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points, and I know this was raised previously at the March committee, and I do fully appreciate that when purchasing the house, the applicants may have been advised of many things, and obviously that is disappointing. But ultimately, the planning department's function is to advise, what are the facts, and these are restrictions set by national government. We have no control over them. So ultimately, the 1 meter benchmark is very much written clearly. A lot has been said about the existing boundary treatments in Dexter Lane, although I think it's quite evident that where these are present, they are the back elevations enclosing rear gardens. There is very much a difference between the front elevation of a dwelling and the rear elevation of the dwelling, and what you naturally expect to see when you walk up to one. So that's just a point that I'd wish to kind of remind members of. I think ultimately the decision is being made on the additional 20 centimetres, but ultimately, as I've previously stated, it's not my professional opinion that the fence in a 1 metre or 1.2 metre form is acceptable. There's simply a matter of what the local plan authority can control, and that is the application before you today. So ultimately, I would just remind members that even if there's a preference for siting it back from the highway, under permitted development, the applicant can erect a 1 metre fence in that very location. So thank you very much.
Well, we have, well, if you can't make your mind up, I'm sure the people are going to answer you can't.
So can you clarify for me and probably for everybody else? So if we were to refuse this 1.2 metre fence, the applicant could take down that 20 centimetres and not have to put in planning permission for the 1 metre fence. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Now we've got to the questions to the officer. Well, yes, as a gentleman, of course you could do that.
All right, well, can I commend you for the presentation?
Okay, we now move on to general debate. Members.
I'll stop. I'll start. People who've looked at the minutes of last time round see that I abstained because this is subjective. And for the sake of consistency, I will be abstaining again.
Councillor Whelan.
What I am confused about more than anything, I don't know if it's confusion as to why it goes along and then goes up like that. I'm not quite clear why it's like that. Why do that design? What was the purpose of doing it like that?
Through you, Chair, if I can answer that. If I know it's not a question, it's just I can clarify.
Please
Yeah,
answer.
yeah, please do.
So conventionally, you'll find this arrangement, usually it's in the other way, where it kind of steps from 1 meter close to the highway up to 1.8, because that's how many people kind of circumnavigate the permitted development legislation, whereby you're only allowed 1 meter in proximity to a highway, and then you can go up to 2 meters when it's not adjacent to a highway. So you often have this steeped, sloped arrangement. I'm not entirely sure as to why that's been done here. Potentially it's because it's close to an access. And usually there's, to see the heights of small children, etc., there is usually a restriction of a kind of a 0.6 meters to actually make sure they're visible to cars. But ultimately that's kind of why the arrangement is usually there. Just to clarify though, that is not what's being proposed under this application.
Thank you very much.
We're still on debate, and I'd like to make Mr. Trapp comes after Councillor Hupper. I'd like to make a comment. It was said by Mr. Palmer that this was a lovely home, and I agree with him. And I think one of the things that makes that little close lovely is because it is open, and it has got grass on view, which of the other houses, and it's got an open aspect which I think is very attractive, entirely in line with the description of lovely. I think with a fence up as suggested, I don't think so. And my view is that the officers have got it right, and I would like to. We'll continue to talk about it, but my proposal is that we adopt the officers' recommendation for the reasons stated. And I'd like that. I haven't checked to see if I've got a seconder. I don't know if I have. Councillor Trapp, is that a seconder? Yes. So that's seconded by Councillor Trapp. We'll continue the general debate. Members. Councillor Huffer.
I think this is one of those really difficult applications where your heart tells you one thing and your head tells you something else. The planning officers training is ringing in my, or planning training, where you have to look at the application and not the applicant. This applicant wants to keep children and small animals safe, but we have to regard this as the dwelling and not the person. Now, planning law is quite clear. This can only be a 1 meter fence. The fact that it's 1.2 meters is utterly irrelevant in terms as far as planning is concerned. So I'm with much reluctance, because I don't think it's a particularly devastating thing, 20 centimeters, but I think we have to set a precedent here, because I've got areas in my village where people have been made to take down a 1.3 meter fence and put up a 1 meter fence because it was adjacent to the highway. And we can't have one rule for one and one rule for others. I'm afraid if it's a 1 meter fence limit, then it has to be the same and consistent throughout the district. So reluctantly, I have to support the officer's recommendation, but it is with reluctance.
Members. Councillor Trapp, of course.
Thank you very much. I have noted on the 5.3 the neighbours' comments, and they in a sense are supportive of the idea of that the fence is an eyesore. And I take what Councillor Ambrose Smith is no longer here, but if you look further around that Dexter Lane, it is actually quite open, and I think I'm sorry that the fence is going up, even 1 meter. I think what the other neighbors have done of putting the fence back against their house has been really good, and that's much securer than having a 1 or 1.2 meter fence, which any self-respecting dog would jump over quite happily. A cat would have no problem at all, and a child after over 3 would be delighted to climb, as I did. So that's why I'm seconding Councillor Hunt's proposal. And I think it is difficult. I think the advice that the owner received, of course, the developer would say, oh, yes, yes, of course, you can do what you like with this. I mean, and that should have been actually, I had the same problem when I moved into my house 30 years ago. I double checked that I could make an opening on the side entrance. I was told by the council, yes, I can. But I thought, are you really saying I can do it without any permission? And I telephoned back a few weeks later, and they said, yes, you can. And therefore I went ahead with it. But I did check for that before in fact, after I bought the house. So I'm afraid, I think in this case, I think I would very much support the officer.
Right, members. I can't see anybody who is going against the officer's recommendation, so I'm going to go to a vote. Unless anybody's got any reason not to, no. So I'm going to go to a vote. Will those in favour of supporting the officer's recommendation to refuse the application as proposed by myself and as seconded by Councillor Trapp? Will those in favour please raise their hands? Will those against? Any abstentions?
That motion is passed with 7 votes in favour, no votes against and 2 abstentions.
Oh. Yes, can somebody go outside and ask Christine Ambrose Smith to come back in? Thank you. Right, gentlemen, ladies, we've got item number 7. Simon, anything you'd like to add to the figures you've given us?
Thank you, Chair. I just thought for the benefit of new members, I'll just explain briefly what these tables mean. So when you see them next time, you'll know what we're discussing. So the first table is a list of determinations in April 2023. So it's decisions made. And what we've done, what that table does is it divides the type of planning applications we've made decisions on into majors, minors, householders and others. So major applications are anything more than 10 dwellings or anything more than 1,000 square meters of floor space or anything on a site that's more than a hectare. And that's just under 2.5 acres, Chair. So we were discussing that earlier, weren't we? And then minors is all other non-householder applications. And then the householder applications are, well, the majority of applications, that's always the most that we will determine because that's extensions to houses and things like that. And then the others is sort of other types of development. And then you've got discharge of conditions and non-material amendments and then tree applications. And then those targets are, you can see that we should determine 90% of majors within 13 weeks. And then for minors, it's 8 weeks at 80%. And then you can see what those targets are. And then the top line with the highlighted percentages, that was what was achieved last month. So you can see for majors, we're doing really well. Others were doing really well. Minors were a little bit below target, but quite close. And when it says within 13 weeks or within 8 weeks, It doesn't always mean that. It means within those statutory timeframes or within agreed extensions. So there's quite a few extensions of time that we have to arrange with planning, but as long as the applicants agreed them, then that counts as a within target. So we, rather than subdivide that even further and make it even more complicated, we just put it down as within those timeframes. And then the next table down is validation. Now, validation is the process that takes place at the beginning when the planning support team makes sure that there's sufficient information that's been provided in the planning application. And then when that's ready, it gets validated and everything goes on the website. The importance of doing that within 5 working days is because the start date for your overall target is the day that everything's submitted, as long as it's valid. So it's really important to have a very fast validation process, and that's why we've got a target of 75%. But you can see here that that's working really well at 94% within target. The next table down is just a breakdown of the 4 teams we have. We have 4 development management teams, and this just tells you about the workload that they currently have. And if you want any questions about that, I can answer those. You can see team 4 is a little bit down because that's where our vacancies are, because team 4 only has 0.8 full-time equivalent staff. But and you see on the bottom, we've got agency staff, they're working in nominally in team 4. So that's what that is. And then the next table, the chart, that just gives you a year-by-year comparison about how many applications we've received. And then, of course, at the top, it tells you that we received 146 applications in April. And you can see 2023 is quite low in compared to other years, not as low as 2020, but it's showing a similar pattern. We're usually quite busy in the spring, and then you get a quiet period in the middle of the summer and a quiet period just before Christmas. But you can see that we're still fairly busy, but not as busy as the department was in 2021. 2021 was a sort of boom year for construction because even though it was sort of just after COVID, there was a kind of big pickup in house building and because people wanted to move to the countryside and all that sort of stuff. So 2021 was a very busy year, and we're still dealing with some of that backlog in terms of major applications. That's why what you'll see over the coming months, when we start presenting some big applications to this committee, some of them will have been received in 2020 and 2021, and we're just getting around to determining them now. But at the moment, we're a little bit lower than what you'd like to be because there's a bit of a downturn in construction and obviously people's finance. So householder applications aren't as frequent as they would be, but it's cyclical. So but we're still fairly busy. And over the other side is just telling you about appeals that have been decided. And you want to keep them you want to win as many appeals as possible because and you can see if it's dismissed, that means the council's successful. It means the appeal was lodged against the council decision to refuse permission and it was dismissed. So that's a tick. So when it's allowed, that's kind of a cross for us. And the government do measure that because one of the government's measurements of planning is if you're a local authority and a lot of appeals are allowed against your decisions, it shows that you're doing something a bit strange with your decision making. So you need to keep those as low as possible, but you can see we're still doing fairly well. Most of them are dismissed. And then there's 2 appeals in the pipeline, and that's the next table down. And then the final section under performance is enforcement. And that's quite complicated. No point in me going into detail today. It's just telling you sort of what is tracking the workload of our enforcement team. And that doesn't mean we're going to be serving lots of enforcement notices. It just means we've been informed of breaches that we're investigating, and most of them are going to be resolved amicably or through negotiation. And in essence, what we try and avoid is serving enforcement notices. But what we like to do is get people to comply through negotiation. So that's essentially what that information means. And when I present it in the next few committees, I'll just track it and tell you how we're going. But if you have any questions, come and see me or I'll answer them now. But I hope that explains what those tables mean, and you'll realise why we put that at the end of each committee agenda every month. Thank you, Chair.
If I could just make a comment, Simon. We have had conversations about the confusion with Grunty Fen and Wilburton and the different villages, which is a peculiar local problem. But here we are, we've got land at Pools Road, Wilburton, in the upcoming hearing cases. Now, that isn't in Wilburton. It might be in the parish of Wilburton. It's in Witchford. And the people of Witchford are particularly concerned and have contacted me on many occasions. And I suspect the people in Wilburton think, well, it's 3 miles away from me. It's in another village. It doesn't matter. So there's a very good example there of where Wilburton Parish Council should be kept fully in the picture of what's going on there, because they're very much Wilburton or want to know, but it's not there where it is. Witchford should certainly be kept in the picture there, because it is in Witchford if you go there. Thank you very much indeed. Now we have one final item, and that's the minutes of the planning committee on the
Got to go into exec.
yes, I know. Right, members. Only need to go to exempt session if you're going to want to discuss something that was said. If you're going to agree to this, then there's no point in going to exempt session. Is there any point that members want to go into exempt session?
No, 'cause they weren't there.
Are you- Yes,
Only because this item is just to approve the exempt minute as a correct record of that meeting. They were only provided to the people who were at that meeting.
so you'll see, members, that it's only about half of you who are involved anyway. So has any of those people who have got the right to appeal got any comment to make?
Oh, no.
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 Thank you very much indeed. So that is, we won't go to the exempt minutes, and therefore I'm going to close the meeting and thank everybody for their patience and understanding. You want to vote about what? Have a vote about not going to exempt. Are these minutes approved?
Are we accepting the exempt minutes? Yes or no?
Thank you. And they're the people who are at that meeting. Thank you very much indeed. Sorry about that confusion, but thank you very much for attending, and I hope the new members have enjoyed themselves.